What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 147 and another very special interview today. Now, many of my listeners and followers on social media would have heard me sing the praises of a certain Denver, Colorado-based wrestling promotion called Lucha Libre Laughs. Even more so following recent interviews that I've conducted with the likes of Royce Isaacs and Naya and the yoga monster Mike Seidel, of course. Well, my next guest is the man whose fault it is for my unhealthy obsession with Lucha Libre and Laughs currently. Can I introduce to you the man responsible for bringing the wrestling scene in Denver back to life, you could say, with the very unique Lucha Libre and Laughs, and of course Respect Women's Wrestling. Can I introduce to you Nick Gossert? So Nick, good afternoon where you are. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey there, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute pleasure. And of course, we've, kind of interacted through Facebook and Messenger for quite a while now. And I think we first hooked up because of the interviews that I've done with the likes of Royce and especially Anaya, and more recently with Mike, of course, Mike Seidel. But I mean, I have to ask you, you must be immensely kind of proud with what you've been able to build with the Lucha Libre and Laughs over the last 6 years. And of course, it would have been, I think, the 6th anniversary in March, or around then. I certainly had an anniversary show scheduled for March, which didn't go ahead. But I mean, nonetheless, you must be really, really proud with everything you've achieved over in Denver there with Triple L.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, our 7-year anniversary show.
7 years, sorry.
Oh, no problem. How dare you?
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, unfortunately, the world is on fire in America more than most places. So that show got scrapped. We did lose a couple of shows, but it's one of those things that's out of our hands. So all we can do is wait to start doing awesome stuff again.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the time of recording this, I know that Triple L were meant to have had some shows back this previous weekend, July the 17th and 18th. Now, obviously, with the ongoing concerns with COVID still on our doorstep, of course, you had to reschedule those for August the 21st and August the 22nd. But as a promoter, how frustrating has it been for you to have had to cancel these shows and reschedule shows and not being able to entertain the fans and do what you do best, Nick?
I'm getting a little used to it, but there's just a big hole in life and nothing can possibly fill it. But it was very, it's one of those things where, once again, it's out of our hands. There's nothing we can, do about it on our level. But it did sting when the very first show that was canceled at the Oriental Theatre in Denver was Lucha Libre and Laughs. We had a sold out show, The place was, we had every ticket sold. Place was just going to be another packed, fun time. We had Danhausen coming in, Super Thunder Frog, Wildcat, Mike Seidel. Unfortunately, somebody who shall not be named for reasons of cancellation. But we had this amazing show lined up. Woke up the morning of the show. We had voice messages from the theater manager, the mayor's office, and the governor's office saying, "Hey guys, bad news, can't do the show." And fortunately, I caught nearly everybody before they got to the airport. So, but it was not exactly how I planned that Friday.
No, but like you say, a decision taken completely out of your hands. But what have you been doing to kind of fill your time creatively then, Nick? Because I know that you've been spending a lot of time on the YouTube channel, certainly with Lucha Libre and Laughs, and trying to catch up on some work you've not had the time to before. So fill us in on what you've been able to do kind of creatively.
Well, I've mostly been playing with action figures.
Very good.
Recreating what I wanted to do. No, mostly, as you pointed out, it's been me going through, because a lot of people have shot shows and I just never got the footage from them. So as soon as this all went down, I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to be home for a while. Bugged everybody. And I've put out, I want to say, close to 70 matches that I've edited and posted since March 13th. We've been rolling out the last live show of Respect, the women's show I run. So yeah, it's pretty. I kind of did the math. I've edited the time length equivalent of watching all 3 extended cut Lord of the Rings movies worth of wrestling.
that in itself is very, very impressive. But I mean, I kind of binge watch Lucha Libre Laughs on YouTube almost on a daily basis, to be honest with you. So there's tons of footage out there on the Triple L YouTube channel especially, and I'll give you an opportunity later to kind of throw out that address along with all the other links and plugs that you want to throw out there. But when you come back in action in August, the 21st and 22nd, you're obviously working closely in connection with the authorities in Denver and, of course, with the Oriental Theatre, the location itself. You know, they're obviously making the decisions behind the scenes. But what kind of steps and precautions are you and the theatre taking to ensure that the August show can actually go ahead and be as safe as possible for everybody there, the staff, the wrestlers, and, of course, the audience members?
Yeah, you know, because the main thing is masks. As you probably see in the news, have a hard time getting Americans to wear masks, but if they want in the building, they have to wear them. But yeah, so masks, social distancing, because we're only allowing 50 people in per show. This is a venue that can hold 600 seated. So that's why we're doing multiple shows each night, just to get the most amount of people in to watch the wrestling. Obviously, the performers are, wanting to do multiple shows, try to catch up on that, emotional rush of performing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much just distance, wear masks, hand wash, hand sanitizer stations all over. It's one of those things where it sounds like an easy thing to do, but just I know plenty of places are not enforcing those type of rules, and that's why things keep getting pushed back.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you broke it down nicely there that on the 21st and 22nd of August, you got 2 shows per date. So 4 shows over the space of 2 days, which is going to be fantastic at your regular home, the Oriental Theatre. What can anybody who's attended any of those shows expect? I mean, what can people in attendance expect to see during the course of those 4? You've described them as 4 different shows, 4 very unique shows. So how unique will they be on top of what we ordinarily expect from Triple L?
Well, we are keeping, like I said, we're making everything different because I know there are a lot of people who are starved for live wrestling. People who have been wanting to go out and watch a show and they haven't been able to since early March.
Yes.
So I think people, if they had the option, would buy tickets to all 4. So I wanted to make sure that each and that's why I wanted to make sure each and every show there's no repeats. It's different matchups, different performers, different comics, different everything each and every time. So if somebody bought all 4 tickets, well, they're going to see they're not going to see the same thing twice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take a real deep dive into Triple L and Respect very, very soon. But for now, let's kind of take a trip in the Wayback Machine then, Nick, because I want to kind of hear a bit more about your wrestling fandom and how it all began for you. So can you remember how you were first introduced to pro wrestling? What was kind of going on when your world was changed forever as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, as a kid, it was just, that was a thing we watched on TV. It was never like a moment of discovery for me. It was just an omnipresent childhood experience, like watching cartoons or playing with action figures. All the kids watched WWF, now WWE. And then, we'd watch all the, I think it was like whatever the Saturday show was. I completely blanked on the morning one. But yeah, we would watch it. Any WWF TV that was on basic cable, we would watch. We'd never get the pay-per-views because when you're a kid, particularly 30 years ago, you don't stop and think like, how do pay-per-views work? It just seems so alien. So we would just get the recaps. Then we'd go out in the backyard and beat the ungodly hell out of each other. When you're 10, you don't understand the difference. You don't understand what a work means. No. So, we're out there like just clotheslining the crap out of each other, going home hurt. The magic of childhood. And then I kind of drifted away from it kind of after high school, just that typical, I'm off to college time and I don't have cable. I'm barely getting by. So kind of drifted off from there. Most of my focus, because at the time I was fighting amateur, kickboxing and mixed martial arts. And then for a spell, like I was like 23, I want to say. I had the opportunity to move to Mexico for a while. So when I got to Mexico, something I discovered on TV very quickly was CMLL and AAA Lucha Libre. So I would watch Lucha Libre, and then the amazingly bad like Lucha Libre monster movies of the 60s and the 70s, where if anybody listening has no idea what I'm talking about, look up El Santo, look up Blue Demon on IMDb. You will see this massively wonderful genre where Mexican wrestlers solved mysteries, fought Dracula, thwarted Dr. Frankenstein. They're just completely bonkers, and they're amazingly bad. And then when I got back to the States, because I'd been watching so much Lucha Libre, I started going to the local Lucha Libre shows, started making friends. Because when I walked in, like I think I was like the only gringo in the building. Like me and my friend Nate would walk in, everybody would turn and look at us. And I'm kind of a bigger guy, so I think they all assumed I was a wrestler. I'm surprised nobody was like, "Oh, backstage is over there." But made friends with performers. Started refereeing through that, and then once upon a time there was the two, Sam Talent and Nathan Lund, the comedy commentators from Triple L. They decided to do a festival called Too Much Funstival, and they asked about getting wrestling involved. So for one of the shows, they decided to have some matches, and then there was a band playing, and then some comics, including a pre-Fame Ron Funches, which was kind of fun. And so we had some wrestling matches and then all that. And I just kept thinking, like, there's something there. There's something there. We just got to like make the ingredients work. So I just kind of sat in the back of my brain. About that time, I shattered my left hand, which I don't recommend. 0 stars on Yelp for that. And I was just like, just kind of obsessed with this idea. I looked around. The Oriental Theatre was all totally into it. Dos Equis beer, once again, through a bar owner, a friend of mine, he introduced me to the representative of Dos Equis for the area. They wanted to sponsor it, all local wrestlers, comics, and I thought it was just going to be this like dumb thing, we'll do it once and it'll be fun and we'll have these fun memories, but it worked. And then I was like, what if we do this again? And now here we are 7 years later, and it's the albatross around my neck. It is the horrible fate I cannot escape.
There we go. No, you love every minute of it. You do. But I mean, back before Lucha Libre Laughs, what was the wrestling scene like in general in Denver? Because I get the impression that there wasn't much going on. That if you wanted to catch some good wrestling, you probably had to travel out of town. But am I right in thinking that the wrestling scene in Denver was not that hot? Maybe 8 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Nick.
It kind of depends. It kind of goes in waves, because one thing that Colorado suffers from is it's very geographically isolated from other big cities. So case in point, there's, you'll have great wrestling scenes up in the Northeast, where somebody could be in Philadelphia. Well, they can be in New York, New Jersey, like a lot of cities in a couple hours. Just hop on a train, boom, there you are. When you're in Colorado and Denver, the two nearest cities that had wrestling was Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Kansas City, Missouri. Right. And each one is 7 to 8 hours driving. So yeah, it's a bit of an adventure to try to get to another state. Like like me and my friend Sam Dak Draper on Ring of Honor. Like a couple of times we made the trip all the way to Albuquerque for a show there. And I was refereeing because their main ref broke his foot, I believe. And, it's one of those things, like, in order to get there, you leave, 10 hours before the show. You do the show, and then you have to drive another 8 hours and hopefully get home before dawn. So it's not an ideal place. So it is tougher to bring in large numbers of talent, because it's always going to be a flight. Yeah. There's very, very few people who are in a position to drive that far. They exist. Case in point, I keep saying case in point. Why is that my phrase today? But
let's go with that. It works.
We just did a no audience show taping of Respect. And there's a couple of really great women wrestlers from Salt Lake City, 7-hour drive, and they'll come over and do it. But that's, when you get them in a group. So you would have Denver being very insulated because it's very isolated. And that leads to primarily reliance on local talent. And, no matter how good local talent can be, once you've seen every matchup 10 times, audience interest is going to wane.
Yeah.
And it's the tried and true method of, we'll bring in like one former WWE star, and to pop attendance. And fortunately, I kind of got a little bit ahead of the wave that we've seen in the last few years, where indie wrestling has become very hot, and it's become culturally cool again to be a wrestling fan. It's so. Fortunately, I got a little bit ahead on that, so I kind of was able to ride that wave, because my sensibilities have never been like, oh, let's bring in, a cool WWE guy. It's always been like, hey, let's bring in like cool indie talent, like that type of thing. The people that I want to watch.
Absolutely.
It's pretty much it's the the Joe Strummer thing. Be the band that you want to see. So I always say, be the show you want to see. And that's the philosophy I wandered into this with, where I wanted to put on a show that I would have paid $15 to see. Yeah. And that's, turned out that gamble paid off. Turns out that, the city of Denver kind of followed me down that rabbit hole, and it's worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, Nick, what's your thoughts on, outside of the indie scene of North America and Lucha Libre Laughs in general, what's your thoughts on the kind of more mainstream wrestling products that's out there at the moment? Are you a fan of anything that's going on? I know we're all in a bit of a strange time, and there's a lot of strange matches and strange shows going on. But do you watch much WWE at the moment, AEW, NXT? What's kind of, doing it for you at the moment as far as more mainstream stuff then?
I've honestly it's only been in the last month or so that I've got, because honestly, after the March show was canceled, it took me a couple of months to be able to watch wrestling again, because it was just so depressing for me.
Yeah.
And then I started watching it again, and it was a very important thing that happened, the speaking out movement, where finally a lot of women in the industry came forward to say, hey, the following guys are scumbags and need to be exposed. And then suddenly it was just like, oh God, I don't even want to watch wrestling again. But I'm kind of back into being enjoying it again. I've been mostly lately watching just Attitude Era pay-per-views, but for the most part, I watch NXT, NXT UK, and AEW when I can, and that's mostly because I don't have the channel to watch Impact. I just watch whatever I can find online, because they've been doing a great job lately.
Phenomenal job, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they really kind of in that post Lucha Underground collapse, and they grabbed a lot of their talent. They've had an amazing roster. They've done great things, put on great TV. They've had their problems, just like any other big wrestling company does, but they've been doing fantastic. I've been very much enjoying. I mean, granted, I have that personal connection, because it's like half the AEW roster has slept on my couch at one point or another. So it's like, it's cool just watching my friends have fun. I mean, I got to, when they were in Denver in early March, it was fun. We all got to go out and have dinner, and it's like, oh boy, this is a lot different than last time when we all hung out. It's like I was talking about, one time after a Triple L show, it was me, the commentary, Mike Seidel, Leva Bates, Joey Janela, Bryce Remsburg, the referee, and Orange Cassidy went to a fan's birthday party to surprise them, because it was at a bar down the street. It's like, now, yep, that type of party doesn't happen for anybody but, me and Mike, I guess. And then NXT, it's the same sort of thing, where I'm like, yay, look at Shotzi, she's kicking butt. Hey, look at Keith Lee, he's awesome. So it's, Candice LeRae, yay. Our former women's champ, and she's the current Respect champ, Ali Gatto. I will always remember her match. I really wish I had video of this one to put on YouTube. Her and Candice LeRae did a barn burner a couple of years ago before she got signed. And just, so I've always been a big fan of hers. So it's pretty much like I'm following more the people that, I know and like, and are able to do the sort of matches that I like. I'm not saying I don't like the kind of mainstream, quote unquote, WWE TV style, but I also don't have 15 hours a week to watch wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's not true. I just am not watching wrestling.
Yeah, and there's so much product, even with a lot of companies kind of on lockdown and not performing and not producing much TV. There's still so much content out there. But I was going to ask you a question along the same sort of lines. When you kind of bring in the bigger names, or maybe some top indie talent, you mentioned Candice LeRae, Keith Lee, Taya Valkyrie, Orange Cassidy, that have probably all slept on your couch, I'm sure, but performed for Triple L. Do you kind of go for particular indie names that you think will suit the vibe of Triple L in particular? So if they don't quite kind of fit the remit of what Triple L expects from, you know, the whole package, if they don't fit the package, do you kind of think twice, and do you go for particular performance?
It comes down to who's fun. Because there are types of wrestling that, you know, because you'll have wrestlers who are very kind of serious wrestlers, but you know, they don't necessarily need to do comedy matches. I remember, you know, one time we were doing a show up in Omaha, Nebraska, and which is, you know, 2 states away from here, and we were part of a big festival, and there were some of the local wrestlers. They were like, well, we don't really do comedy wrestling. I'm like, you don't have to do comedy wrestling. You go out and do whatever it is you do to the best of your ability. And these guys, you know, our commentary team, they'll make it funny. The only people who I've never really connected with, and this, because I know a lot of them that are great people and good at what they do, are some of the more hardcore guys. You know, this isn't a type of show where we're light tubes and stapling dollar bills to the head just because we're fun. We're keeping it light. So blood and gore, it has its place. It's just not this place. Yeah. So, you know, but like for the most part, many of those type of wrestlers can do other things, because you'll see a wrestler like Effie, who's one of my, you know, personal favorites right now. Yeah, he'll go out and do the tube stuff. I remember watching him and Nick Gage go at it at GCW in Chicago, and it's like horrific what I just saw. But then he can also be do a fun matches. Like same thing with Joey Janela. Janela, you know, got famous for bleeding and being thrown off of the tallest thing he could possibly find. But he also can just do awesome wrestling match, and he can be a bit of a goofball.
He's a great character. Yeah, he really is.
I always I always laugh thinking about it. One time, it was once again another match I wish I had video of. It was Mike Seidel and Joey Janela, and they did a spot, of course, where they got suplexed through some chairs out in the crowd. So at the end of the night, he was like, we were walking over to a bar, and he's like, well, what do you think? Was that good? I was like, this really sucks, man. Those chairs you broke just cost us the venue. And he was just staring at me like, oh, no, are you serious? I'm like, nah, man, I'm just kidding. Let's go get a beer.
Awesome. But for any of my listeners that may be kind of listening to me talk about Lucha Libre and Laughs for the first time, how would you describe to anybody that's not come across Triple L, how would you describe to anybody what it is in a few sentences? How would you kind of put it all together? Because I've said 1,000,001 times, it is very, very unique. I mean, you've got a very, very different audience in a very unique theatre, the Oriental Theatre. The commentary is performed by 2 comedians and can be heard over the in-house speakers. And it goes wrestling match, comedy, wrestling match, comedy. So, but how would you kind of, in a nutshell, describe it to any of my listeners that may not have come across it so much just yet?
Simplest way to put it, it is a pro wrestling and stand-up comedy party, and you're invited. It's that simple. You know, we are a comedy and or a stand-up comedy and a pro wrestling variety show, which just ended up complementing each other so well. It's the peanut butter and jelly of fun. It's you know, it is the chocolate and the peanut butter. It's just that perfect mix of the right type of energy, that right type of just fun, audience engaging, back and forth energy that just keeps you know, because our audience, if you come to a Triple L show, you can see 500 people sitting there, and maybe 100 of them are hardcore wrestling fans. We've kind of crossed over to just being fun, you know, nightlife. And that's kind of like what you see really succeeding these days is things like Triple L, things like Lucha Vavoom, which is a burlesque wrestling show, or one of my favorite shows up in Minneapolis, First Wrestling, which is run by Eric Cannon. WrestlePalooza have wrestling, a couple burlesque dancers, and then some fantastic band that many people probably came just to see them, but also get to enjoy the pro wrestling. So it's that type of crossover. If you're not bringing in people who are, if wrestling can always bring in a crowd, but if you're just bringing in the crowd of wrestling hardcore fans, that's not going to match the ones where it's like, hey, what are we doing on Friday night? Well, let's go to this crazy show and see what that's all about. And that's kind of where I feel we crossed over and became successful because we got that reputation. So, now you'll go to a show and you look out, instead of just seeing, a couple hundred people in Bullet Club shirts or, elite shirts, it's like, what, like a bachelorette party came here? What the hell? So yeah, you'll see, a group of women out for a girls' night out. You'll see couples on dates. It's just become a weird part of Denver nightlife.
Yeah.
It's really been the key to a strong success.
And do you think that's gone some way to maybe converting and building a new wrestling fan base in Denver? And kind of, you could have attracted hundreds of people that just went there for the nightlife and the comedy. And now the wrestling fans, and maybe they're the ones turning up in the T-shirts, but you could have gone some way to kind of broaden the wrestling fan base in your local area.
Yeah, like we do. Like I said, I kind of cater. I know there's just I try to steer the ship just kind of into fun waters.
Yeah.
That's why I know there are people who I'm pretty sure if Jim Cornette ever saw a Lucha Libre Laughs show, he would have a stroke and die on the floor. And there are the fans who are like, oh well, it's not really a wrestling show because it's fun. It's like, I don't know what to say to that. I remember one time there was some kind of local bitter vet wrestler who came to a Lucha Libre and Laugh show, and our main event was Mike Seidel, Dak Draper, now with Ring of Honor, and DJZ, now Joaquin Wilde with WWE. As you can imagine, that match was fantastic.
Awesome.
in front of a sold out theater, and Dak Draper, being from here, talked to the guy, and he's like, "Oh, what'd you think?" And he goes, "Well, it's not really a wrestling show." Like, oh, really? You just saw that match and decided this wasn't a wrestling show? Well, it must be fun wherever you're going.
Yeah. But no, it's very, very cool. And like I say, there's so much footage on YouTube of Triple L. Definitely go out and check that out. But let's talk about the other aspect. We've spoken about a bit about the wrestling, but the comedy. And you've got two comedians as your commentary team, Nathan Lund, Sam Tallents. They are your commentators. I think, as you described at the top of the podcast, they've possibly been in connection with Triple L since the very beginning, all those very early years. But how? Just tell us again how you kind of came across Sam and Nathan and kind of convinced them to be part of your very unique show.
For a while, I was involved in stand-up. I did stand up for 3, maybe 4 years. One of those things where I was funny, but you were never gonna, see a Comedy Central special out of me. And I started kind of segueing into producing shows as opposed to performing on them. So I've known Sam and Nathan for years. And then, like I said, I was kind of kicking this idea around. And I remember we were sitting around at a friend's house watching WrestleMania. So, we're, the big wrestling holiday of the year. And I was like, hey guys, what do you think of this idea? And they were like, they were both just like, yeah, let's do this. I'm no questions asked. So, fortunately it's just that perfect. It was just a perfect storm. It was just the right people were in the right place at the right time. And the whole thing just clicked together perfectly.
Yeah, and as I said, between the matches, you do have a local actor, local guest comedian. How do you go about choosing your kind of guest comedians? Because they do eventually join the commentary team for the last match or two. But I mean, you're obviously tuned into the local comedy scene in Denver. But how do you go about choosing your guest comedians?
I mean, it's really just a matter of paying attention to who's doing what and how well they're doing it. Sam and Nathan are still, not at the moment, but are typically, performing every night in different places. So they see who's doing well, who's funny, who's easy to work with. And also Denver just has had an amazing comedy scene for years, which is why we've been lucky where it's like we've gotten people like Adam Caton Holland, Andrew Orvidal, Ben Roy, all have amazing albums you can get on Amazon or whatever platform you use. And they had a hilarious TV show called Those Who Can't, which did 3 seasons on True TV here in the States. We've had people like Ben Kronberg, who had an amazing, had some late night TV appearances. We've lucked out with some festival work where we had, Dave Stone on a show. We had one of the best shows we've done was in Omaha, where 2 of the comedians were Timmy Williams from The Whitest Kids You Know, and Bobcat Goldthwait was our headliner. And Bobcat was, he wasn't supposed to do the show initially. He was just like, that sounds awesome. Can I do the show? I'm like, Bobcat, you're a comedy legend. You can do whatever you want. You could punch me in the face and I wouldn't complain. Of course you could be on the show. And it led to one of the best finishes I've ever had in a show. I'll send you a clip when we're done. The main event was Dak Draper, then he was Sammy Six Guns at the time, versus Eugene from formerly WWE. Eugene, Dinsmore was Sam's main coach when he was down in NXT years ago. So they wanted to work together. And the finish of the match was, the referee gets knocked out, played by me. So I'm dead. Dak turns around, Eugene, boom, kicks him in the gut, gives him a stunner, boom, covers him. But there's no referee. Bobcat Goldthwait dives under the ropes, does the 3 count, and it holds up, Eugene's arms. And then Eugene, of course, goes, drop an elbow on him. So Bobcat Goldthwait walks over and tries to give the best people's elbow that a 60-year-old comedian can do. And I started laughing because, Bobcat falls on him and then goes, are you okay? I'm like, you could have stuffed Bobcat into a cannon and shot it at Dak. He would have been fine. So it was just very, very, very fun.
That's awesome. And let my kind of audience and listeners be warned that the commentary from the comedians and from Sam and Nathan is not PG, ladies and gentlemen. It's not terribly PG. And of course, during your Triple L shows, I believe it is to an 18+ audience. So yes, if you are easily offended, just kind of be ready to laugh, but also be slightly surprised by some of their commentary. But it is highly, highly hilarious, without a doubt. But I want to focus just a little bit on the Oriental Theatre, because only from what I've seen via YouTube and video clips, it is a fantastic venue. It is a very, very unique, I'll use that word again, unique, but it holds up to 550, 600 people, as you said earlier, and it's got different levels to it, so it really, really adds to the matches when the matches kind of escape the ring and go around the audience. I mean, the Oriental Theatre is a very, very important aspect to Lucha Libre Laughs. But I mean, you mentioned earlier why you chose the Oriental Theatre, but tell us about your relationship with the Oriental Theatre and why it has been such a crucial part to the success of Triple L.
Yeah, it was literally the first people who said yes. I emailed half a dozen places. I remembered that place because I had done stand-up there, previously, and they were like, yeah, let's do this. So I came down, I measured it to make sure we could get a ring on the stage. And, right out of the gate, they were very supportive because, the first couple of shows, we weren't drawing, 500+ people. We were drawing, about 100, 150, right, those first few shows, because, hey, we're a new show. It's a new gimmick. And that's how it goes. But they were very supportive. They understood that this was going to be something big, that it just needed a little patience and a little, water that plant to see it grow. And now it's one of those venues that it was just so perfect for us because it was originally built as a movie theater back in 1927. Mm-hmm. So it's got that, hence the name of it. It does have that kind of neo-Oriental classic look of So it kind of, they had like the beautiful murals all the way around the wall. The lighting's very dramatic. Nothing looks like it. So while we do have, we do festival shows, we do shows a couple times a year at one of my favorite breweries that has, been good to us. But it's like
the Ratio Beer Works, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. The Ratio Beer Works, which is like an awesome punk rock themed brewery here in town. Where we do usually three outdoor shows a year. Not this year, but usually. But yeah, it's like the Oriental Theatre is our home. I really would never want it to be anyplace else.
Yeah, no, that's cool. But from my experience, Triple L has always kind of prided itself and built a foundation on homegrown talent. And I think you partially explained earlier that it's possibly because of the distance it takes to travel and get anywhere from where you are, like say a 7 or an 8 hour drive. But I mean, if you look at some of the regular, dare I say, a homegrown talent that's been there pretty much from day one. I mean, I'm going to read off a list of names here. C-Lab Crush, Cody Devine, Xander Creed, Bruce Rogers, Lonnie Valdez, Royce Isaacs, Mike Seidel, and so many more that have kind of worked the majority of the 7 years that Triple L has been in operation. Now, firstly, that must make you really, really proud that Triple L has had so many loyal homegrown performers. But was it always your goal to develop your kind of homegrown performers over bringing in top names?
It was never an intent. Out of the gate, because honestly, like I was just for the first few years, I was just making it up as I went along.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of money. Like I didn't fly anybody in until our first anniversary show, when it was Colt Cabana was our first our first star that came in, but I lucked out because initially, like a lot of the really good local talent, they didn't know who I was. I didn't come up in wrestling, so there was no reason to really trust me, I guess is the way to put it. So after a few shows, they started going, oh, this is actually looks like it could be decent. So we had fortunately all these really, really good local wrestlers, kind of the, top of the time, Lonnie Valdez, who you've probably seen plenty of his stuff on the old YouTube channel at this point. And then it's just, once again, it was just that perfect storm of ingredients where, we had the guys like Lonnie and Bruce Rogers and Xander Creed. And then Lonnie started training 2 young wrestlers, Cody Devine and Royce Isaacs. Royce Isaacs, his intro to local wrestling was he came to a Triple L show and asked me where to train. And I'm like, Lonnie, over here, talk to this guy. And then about that same time,
that's a great story about Royce. Yeah, fantastic.
And then Sam Udell, aka Dak Draper, now he got fired from WWE and moved back to Denver. Probably wasn't the smart move for him, but it worked out for me because I had, as we had these like a good core team of locals who'd been around for years, we had these good up and comers like Royce and Cody, and then we had somebody recently let go from WWE move back home. So suddenly we had this amazing core of very good performers. And Sam was, Dak Draper was very instrumental in that because I think one of the matches that really was like the first, oh my God, did that really just happen here, was him versus Chris Hero. And I was refereeing that match, and I almost forgot to start counting 10 on the outside because I was so blown away by what I was watching. It was like I always talk about Chris Hero. He's like the David Blaine of wrestling. All wrestlers are magicians, but he's just that step above everyone where you could be 5 inches away from him kicking somebody in the face and not understand how he's not murdering them because it's so good.
Yeah, indeed. But an impressive, like I say, a good core of wrestlers that have been the foundation for Triple L over the last 7 years. Just switching tactics ever so slightly. Now, you're also the co-founder and the promoter of Respect Women's Wrestling, also based in Denver. I've spoken a little bit about Respect during this episode of Wrestling with Johners already, but it started about 1.5 years ago, 2019. Now it's described as women's pro wrestling plus women's rock and roll equals the party of the future. Now, once again, another very unique vision for a wrestling group. What can you tell my listeners about Respect if they haven't come across Respect Women's Wrestling and how it all came about, how it all started?
Yeah, pretty much where it came from is, once again, Colorado just started having this amazing crop of female talent. We did a show years ago. It was Triple L Ladies Night. Aligato versus Angel Trinity versus Candice LeRae was the main event on it. Still one of the best matches, I think we've ever had. And then, like I said, we just started getting so many good women wrestling that it was kind of, it was getting hard, because it's like with Triple L, we only do 5 matches a show. And we only really run, like 6-7 shows a year at the Oriental. We do some smaller shows, festival shows, but it was just getting harder when I wanted to give more women more spots. And I was like, finally, we did an amazing tournament for the women's title. And we had, great talent on there, like Leva Bates, Solo Darling, Sage Sin, just really great. So we had a blast. And I was like, God damn it. I was trying to give them more and more ring time and more time in front of the audience. And finally I was like, you know what, because I was trying to do try to do more all women shows, but it just was getting so hard to do it in the schedule. So I decided, let's just do something different. And I was like, well, we do comedy and wrestling here, and, kind of borrowing a page from the way Eric Cannon does with WrestlePalooza, where a band plays intermissions. It's like, let's do something kind of like that. So we took all these amazing local women, also the women from Hugo's Lucha Libre. For our first show, we brought in Holiday and Leva Bates. Leva and I worked plenty together at Triple L, so she was all over it, and found a good venue on the other side of town. Just wanted to make it as distinct from Triple L as humanly possible. I didn't want it to be like Triple L for girls. I wanted it to be its own thing. So I brought that up with my friend Matt Yaden, who runs Rocky Mountain Pro Wrestling, and they have an amazing Twitch stream and YouTube channel. And he was like, I love it. So we kind of came together. I kind of did the booking, the promoting. They did the video production for it. Unfortunately, the first show didn't turn out too well just because of a lighting issue. So unfortunately, that one's not available. But on YouTube, we've got everything from the second show onwards. So there's, you'll see great talent like the local homegrown people like Aligato, who, heck, within 6 months of wrestling, she got a televised match on SmackDown against Natalia. Actually, it wasn't just like a beat 'em up; she got a match with her. It was pretty darn cool. Rochelle Riveter, Bentley Powell. There's so many great local women, and then so you put them in there, finally give them a good showcase, because hey, everybody knows that these women are bringing in, Holiday, Leva Bates. We brought her in as much as we could before AEW took off. Solo Darling, Delilah Doom, Ruby Reyes. So you get these like some of my other favorites like Diamante. There's just Kira Hogan. There's just I could just go on and on about the amazing female talent out there in the world. So it's really cool to bring them in here, which helps spotlight the local talent more than you would normally think. Because hey, if somebody like Aligato, Bentley Powell, so on and so forth, can put on top level matches with Impact, AEW, former WWE talent, it really says something.
Yeah, indeed. And as I'm sure you're aware, and all of my listeners will be aware, that there's the speaking out movements that's been kind of going online now for the last couple of months. So I have to say, it's had a massive impact on the whole wrestling world over the last couple of months. But as someone within the industry, such as yourself, Nick, what are your thoughts when all of these, horrific stories are coming out online on Twitter? And as a promoter, how do you ensure that all of your wrestlers and performers and staff and fans to a certain degree are, working in a safe environment? How do you kind of deal with that challenge as a promoter, both for Lucha Libre Laughs and for Respect?
Well, it's one of those things where this was important. There's a lot of people who will be like, oh, it's ruined wrestling forever. It's like, no. We did this. The same thing happened in comedy, 2 years ago. It's just something that has to be done. You have to, get all those people kind of out of the business as much as you can.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, wrestling the people who are very much influenced by, the 70s, the 80s, and even into the 90s, it kind of had this built-in misogynistic culture that is going away. It's one of those things where if you look at it, especially on the indie level, it's very interesting to see wrestling being reclaimed by more liberal audiences and performers. People a lot of times when they think wrestling, they think a bunch of, racist, homophobic rednecks, being terrible somewhere in the South. But now it's like you have these crowds that are very specifically inclusive, where it's like, hey, and it's like, hey, we want everyone come in. Hey, men, women, straight, gay, trans, non-binary, everybody, come on, let's have a party. And unfortunately, there's still the hangers-on who are shitty people, and they're really bitter about being nudged out because they're like, it's just, they don't understand why. Hey, I can't just be an awful human being and everybody will still like me. Weird. And there are some people who got, shown the door from wrestling that unfortunately hit a little close to home. There, we did book Joey Ryan constantly for Lucha Libre Laughs, and even once for Respect as a surprise opponent. And, that's just one of those things where, for legal reasons, we kind of can't really go into a lot of details for that case, because that's other people's business. That's other people's, legal issues. But, it is what it is on the public scale based on the allegations against him. So all I can do is just go, well, I'm clearly not going to book this person and erase their, matches from our YouTube channels. And then we just go forward. Because that's really all you can do. I know lots of other promotions are doing the same thing, both big and small. And unfortunately, there are a lot of crappy people who will continue to get bookings from shows just looking to make a quick buck. And that's just the unfortunate truth of things. But, not much, that's out of my hands. All I can do is control my show and make it the best place possible.
Indeed. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. You have had a number of wrestlers who've recently had some great exposure and some nationwide recognition on various bigger TV shows. For example, Royce Isaacs, one half of the Wild Cards, doing some great stuff on NWA Power. The Living Dead girl, Abaddon, she's appeared on AEW a couple of times on Dark. And of course, Dynamite, and Mike Seidel, who was my most recent interview, has had a few matches on WWE TV. So when you see these guys and girls that have kind of made their name in the Denver area and on your shows kind of break out and branch out onto kind of bigger platforms, how does that make you feel?
Bitter and resentful.
Oh, well.
I'm kidding. It's awesome, because it's like, what's a good way to put it? It's kind of like, I remember being a kid, and I watched Evil Dead 2 on cable television. And I went to school the next day, and I was trying to explain to everybody how cool Evil Dead 2 was, but because they never saw it, they could never really understand it. And that's what this is like, where people like Abaddon, Royce Isaacs, Mike Seidel, when other people finally get to see them on a big stage, and it's like, see, I told you how cool it was.
Yeah.
Awesome. And it's that excitement of like, it's awesome when people get to see the things that I think are cool and the people I think are cool, and they're like, these guys are awesome. And it's like, yay. It's just really exciting to see that happen.
Yeah, definitely. They're doing some great stuff. They really, really are. And they continue to keep that connection with Triple L and Denver area, of course. But I personally, I've been watching a lot of Triple L over the last 6 months or so. But I would kind of consider it maybe the best kept secret in all of pro wrestling. And when I'm watching it, I'm thinking, why isn't more people watching Triple L? I really want people to get into this the same way I have. But is part of the charm of Triple L that it isn't trying to be the next WWE. It isn't trying to be something it isn't, and it almost wants to continue being the best kept secret in all of pro wrestling. What would you say to that?
There is a certain aspect of that, because I honestly, until March, never really put much effort into our YouTube channel. I've never like boosted our Twitter or paid or to try to boost our Instagram. It's just one of those, like, I concentrate on the live show, where so long as I'm selling, 500 tickets every single time and giving every single one of those ticket buyers the best damn show I could possibly do, I haven't really put a lot of thought into, video production. We did at one point, we were like this close to a pilot with a certain streaming service. It just fell apart because they wanted ownership as opposed to licensing of it, and I just wasn't going to let that go because, we've seen things like Lucha Libre USA, where they gave the rights entirely to MTV, and then when they got canceled, the show disappeared off the face of the earth because it was caught in legal limbo. And so that's the reason I didn't go down that path. But that's one thing I definitely want to focus more on, is just being able to have a certain amount of content available for people not in Denver. It's like right now you've seen, as you've seen a lot of stuff on the YouTube channel.
Indeed, yeah.
I still have stuff to edit. I'm still waiting on footage. There's matches that I look forward to showing off properly, like Anaya versus Shotzi Blackheart, or Royce Isaacs versus Simon Gotch was an incredibly fun one from last year. So it's one of those things where, because I've been traditionally kind of a one-man show, I'm kind of having more people come on to help with production stuff. So I can just be like, cool, well, I'm running the show. You're in charge of, making sure 2 cameras have the lens caps off and hit record, and we'll go from there. But yeah, like I said, it's like primarily everything for me is just sell tickets, entertain the live crowd. Everything else around that is just, it's important, but not as important to me.
Excellent. Let's throw in some listener and some social media questions then. So firstly, Get Cho Wrestling Comedy Podcast. Now, I think that one or two of the members of that podcast are actually from the Denver area, and they've got a couple of questions, and they've asked, have you thought of doing a mini tour, at least in the states surrounding Colorado? So any thoughts on doing a mini tour and kind of branching out from Denver?
We're talking about that. We did do some out of town shows in the past where, case in point, we did a big festival show in Omaha, the one with Bobcat, Timmy Williams, where we had some awesome wrestling on that one. We had a 4-way. It was Lonnie Valdez versus Royce Isaacs versus Mike Seidel versus Eric Cannon, which was just phenomenal. And then we did some shows, and some more shows like in a smaller town in Nebraska, which were a little on the rougher side, just as far as, getting people out to watch the shows. And then we've been part of, festivals outside of town. But for the most part, every time we've tried doing out of town stuff, we hit, weird stumbling blocks. Like we've tried doing shows in Boulder, which is like the next nearest city, it's where Vader's from. There you go, a good reference. And it's like, no venue will return my email. Or Longmont, another town nearby, where, oh cool, let's try to do a show. Oh, the venues are once again being incredibly weird. Like we went to an Elks Lodge, which is this enormous, beautiful building, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll do this. Well, we need references, and we want to charge you an insane amount of money. Even though we have nothing on our calendar. It's like, okay, that's a strange way to do things. And then out of state becomes a little more difficult because like New Mexico is a very hard place to run wrestling. DWO did that for years, but it's a place where you have to have your wrestlers licensed by the athletic commission. You have to have doctors come in and do pre-match physicals. You have to have paramedics on hand, and that all has to be paid for out of pocket. That's not donated by the state. So I mean, the overhead of running in New Mexico is bananas. Kansas, kind of a similar situation where you have to you have to pay the state a lot of money just to open the doors. I have been talking to somebody who was he was a former wrestler who I'm very good friends with. We're talking about trying to do things in other cities, and this is one of those things where it's nice to be kind of trying to partner with somebody who knows what they're doing and I can actually trust, as opposed to be like, well, I hope this person didn't completely screw everything up by the time I show up. So, we'll see what happens next year. It's something I'd like to do. And I think we kind of have the pieces in place to finally do it. But, until we kind of get past COVID, there's not a lot of plans that can be made.
There we go. So stay tuned and watch this space. But another question from Get Show Comedy Wrestling Podcast, and they ask, have you ever had any of the wrestlers ever want to take a chance on stand up and then also perform on the same show in the ring? So any kind of wrestlers think they're funny enough to get up on stage and entertain the audience between the matches?
I don't think any of them are. Very, very few of them would be funny enough that I would let touch the mic. We for a little while, my friend Ian and I, Ian Douglas Terry, co-host of the Dude Sweet podcast, we were running we tried doing a storytelling show at Ratio Beer Works, where performers like musicians, wrestlers, would get up and tell fun stories of being on the road, we had, Royce Isaacs came up and told a story. Dak Draper told a story. Anaya and his tag team partner Hoodie got way too drunk and tried telling a story, and then just devolved into them yelling at each other. And it became very, very weird. So while there are many very funny comics, usually if Colt's on the show, he will grab the microphone mid-match and tell some funny jokes. That's just, that's Colt. That's going to happen. But yeah, that's one of those things where, what's the nice way to put it? Quality control becomes an issue.
There we go. But just one of my final kind of questions is really to throw it back at yourself, really. Lucha Libre Laughs, they do return August the 21st and August the 22nd. So around about a month's time from now, with 4 different shows, 2 on the 21st, 2 on the 22nd. Any kind of matches or talent that's been booked for that? Anybody that's attending, what type of matches or action can they expect to see?
They're just gonna, I'm not gonna lie. I'm keeping some things a little bit under wraps because I kind of want it to be a surprise, because we're selling 50 tickets. I kind of have the luxury of surprises.
Of course.
And I will just say this: the people coming up to the Friday shows definitely are getting a fun surprise. You'll see it on YouTube because we're shooting those matches and we'll be posting them. So I definitely have some things that are going to be some very fun surprises for people. But, obviously I'm not, flying in some huge star for 50 people, but I did what I could to make them special for the people who come out.
Indeed, it's going to be absolutely awesome, and it's been described as the best night out in all of Denver. So as I said on Twitter the other day, I definitely plan to come to Denver one day and catch a Lucha Libre and Laughs show in person. Would love to do that. But Nick, it's been amazing speaking to you on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. Thank you very much for being a fantastic guest. But before we let you go, here's an opportunity for you to throw out any social media handles you might have, any merchandise or any YouTube channels. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. For people who are listening to this and going, what the heck are they even talking about? Where do I see this dumb thing? The 2 channels, youtube.com/Lucha Libre Laughs, Lucha Libre and Laughs, just search it. You'll find our channel. Yeah. Like I said, I've put up almost 70 matches in the last few months. You'll see stars like, Keith Lee, Sean, just a lot of really awesome stuff. I think you posted a few times the Keith Mike Seidel match, which was absolutely bonkers. The other show, Respect Women. Once again, YouTube/Respect Women's Wrestling, or just search Respect Women's Wrestling. You'll find us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I try to post as much content as possible during these dark times. So there's plenty of cool, weird stuff to be entertained by.
Awesome. But thank you very much, Nick, for being a fantastic guest on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. And who knows, maybe a couple of years down the line, we can do this again and kind of catch up on the last couple of years. But it's been fun talking to you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome. So there we go. Please keep it tuned to the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. And if you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please don't forget to hit that ever important follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to us on, or watching us on YouTube, of course. And don't forget to subscribe to all of our social media channels and follow all of our episodes on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. Thanks again to Nick for being a great guest on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. And thanks to everybody for listening and watching. And we'll catch up with you all again soon.